So I'm on Facebook researching how people working age with kids could live in an RV. And before I knew it, I was like, I think we can do it. We have to do it. So
they got me. They're on their second RV. They're in the 2019 Grand Design Solitude, a 377 MB. They have a dog and they have a 15-year-old daughter. So we're going to talk to her and see how they're doing and how they did it. So Vanessa, welcome.
Hello.
They're the Adventure Detour. If you haven't followed them on Instagram, follow them now because they're awesome. They have lots of great content. So Vanessa, how are you today?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. You're down in Florida, you were saying, right?
Yes, it is so hot.
Yeah,
it is not fall yeah, it is not fall here at all. I forget what time of year it is.
Yeah, and it's September, right?
So right. Sure. Yeah, I'm thinking it's June. Yeah, it's crazy.
Florida's a different animal with that humidity. It's just
my gosh.
Man.
Yeah, it's so amazing the winter, but you have to be an insane person to want to be in an RV here in the summer. Your air conditioner is like, can it keep up today? Can I find a shady spot today? It's rough.
And they can't breathe very well, unfortunately. Those things are really, that humidity really slows them down. It is what it is. I mean, but everyone's AC is running down there constantly. It's just a nice hum in the city, you know?
Right. It's part of it.
Yeah, sure. It is what it is. But all righty, Vanessa. Well, let's kind of get into it. So your personal journey into the full-time RV life, I mean, it started 10 years ago. So 2014-ish. 2015 or whatever, about that time you said.
Yeah.
One, what kind of got you into it, but what really made you push to keep doing it? So let's kind of dive into that. Walk us through that whole process.
Sure, JB. It's crazy because today we know of families that travel full time and it's not such a far out idea. Okay. But in 2014, that wasn't a thing. And, there weren't all these resources either to learn about it. So I had a homeschool friend come to me, and I was already a stay-at-home mom, and I had a toddler at the time. And my friend comes to me, and she had this beautiful house, and she's this photographer in town. And she says, we're selling our house and everything we have, and we're going to buy an RV. And I said, what? Are you okay?
Why?
Like, is your marriage okay? Or your finances? Do you need help? Like, what's going on? And she said, no, I found out that, we could make this work if we sold what we had, and we want to travel as a family for a little while. And I'm like, okay. So I left thinking this is the weirdest idea ever, because her husband had a normal full-time job. She has 2 little kids. And then before I knew it, I'm on Facebook, which was the only thing back then that full-time RVers really had, to chat back and forth with. So I'm on Facebook researching how people working age with kids could live in an RV. And before I knew it, I was like, I think we can do it. We have to do it. So I didn't tell my husband, of course, right? I didn't tell him anything. I'm like secretly at night, Googling and searching. And I'm like, okay, this idea is hatched. And once I had it, I couldn't let it go. So I had to tell him. Of course, he thought I was crazy too. And then he went down his own rabbit hole. And and then the for sale sign went in the yard.
Jeez, and Pete's leap of faith a little bit, huh?
Huge, because that's the other thing, JB. So, right, most people have camped before, or maybe RV'd before, or at least tent camped. We had done nothing. We had never even camped. We had never been to a campground.
Yeah, wow.
So why not sell everything you own, not knowing whether you would like it or not, and move into an RV? So that's what we did.
Goodness. Yeah, y'all are brave. You just pull the blocks and restart it. Let's get real.
Yes, it was crazy. It's so crazy. But once I had the idea, I knew it was going to be one of those life things where if you didn't do it, you would what if yourself to death like forever, right?
Oh, yeah.
What if we would have done it? Yeah. What if we would have done that crazy thing we talked about? And I was like, okay, I can't do that. I can't live with that. I've got to just go for it. So, yeah. And it was supposed to be a 2-year plan. I said, okay, if I'm going to sell our house, which we had just built, by the way, we had just built our dream house, which makes it a little crazy. But
it gets better. It gets better.
Yeah. So like, if we're going to sell the dream house that I thought we're going to live in forever and everything in it, I at least need to commit to this for 2 years, whether we like it or hate it. Right. And it just kept going. And so here we are, still going. on your
10
tent.
years later.
Yeah. Really crazy.
Oh my goodness. So it sounds like your preparation and planning was pretty, one, fast acting, and two, maybe not as planned out as maybe some might do so. So
Right.
preparation and planning is kind of the next step in this whole conversation. So like, what were the steps that you did take to become full-timer? One, you sold your house. First, you planted the seed in your husband's brain. So that's two things. But how did you choose your first RV? And what advice did you get? Like, what would you give someone that's thinking about doing so? Like, how did you do it? How did the prep and planning happen? Walk us through that. And then like, how did you choose the right RV for you to do so?
We did not choose the right RV the first time. And I don't think most people do. I'll be real honest with you, JB. I mean, maybe if you were already an RVer and you've owned quite a few RVs, you know, started with small RVs, different things, then you might have a better pulse on what you should get to full-time in. But I would say that most full-time RVers go really big as they can get, because they feel like you're selling your huge house and you need as much space as possible. And you go for the gusto, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that is a big mistake, though, for a lot of people, because they don't take into account that the size can be kind of a limiting factor on where you want to stay and what you want to do. So we knew nothing about any of this process. I just had Facebook groups and a notebook, and I was taking, this wasn't a thing on Instagram yet. That was just still photos. You know, we had no TikTok. This was not like, there were not all these resources. So it was me and Facebook and a notebook, writing out notes just to try to teach myself how to RV, basically, period, and how to make it work, how to do the insurance, how to, you know, get mail, all the things in a notebook. And the same thing with like looking for RVs, right? People were talking about what RVs they full-timed in, but I didn't even know what a fifth wheel was.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh, an RV is a motorhome, right? I didn't know there were other options. So that's the stuff we were at. It was really rough. And so we started just looking online, and I was like, okay, there's a bunkhouse. That's the perfect idea for transitioning with my daughter. And yeah, we went and bought one in January in Duluth, Minnesota.
Burr.
Don't do that.
Step one, don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't make your first time you drive a large RV in ice and snow. Don't do it. That's what we did. That's what we did, because our house sold instantly in December. I didn't think it would, and it was like gone in a couple weeks, and I had no plan, and there we were buying an RV in January. So that was a little bit crazy. But the biggest takeaway I would tell people is our goal for traveling as a family was to visit as many national parks as we could. And now, in hindsight, you don't want a huge RV if you plan on camping in national parks, because you won't fit. There are very few national park campgrounds you can fit in a large, like 40-foot fifth wheel. It's only
correct.
Very few. So that was a mistake. But we did it not once, we did it twice, because we still have a 40-foot fifth wheel on RV number 2.
So it was a fifth wheel the first time around.
It still was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, both of them were large.
Never pulled before. Oh my goodness.
And we did it in snow. Yeah, that was a bad idea.
So you ripped the Band-Aid quite quickly. It was a little.
We sure did. Yeah.
A little. Here you go, baptism by fire.
Yeah.
I guess we're going for it.
Right. And actually, JB, it was a funny story. So since we bought it in January in Minnesota, it was winterized, right? So we weren't able to have them show us how all the inner workings of the RV are supposed to happen, you know, and we didn't know how to use it. So we bring it back to Kansas City, where we're from, and we had to leave it in storage because we weren't ready to leave just yet. Winterized. Well, by the time it was spring and it was time to unwinterize and we were ready to move in and go, we didn't know what to do or how to use it.
Oh, no.
We had this great idea, though, to hire an RV tech to come to the campground as we were moving into it and show us all the workings and how it works. And that time we were smart enough to take a video. So FYI, to anyone that's going to buy an RV to live in or not, just to travel in, take a video of the walkthrough when they're going through all the parts and how to do everything, because you think you will remember, but you won't remember.
Absolutely. So when I sold in Lincoln, you're glitching out here. So the video, well, I apologize if you're glitching a little bit when it comes out later. But when I was a salesman out of Lincoln, in Nebraska, that's what I would tell everybody. They'd get a full walkthrough. I'm like, hey, video it. Even if it's an hour long, like anything that's specific that you don't know, video. Because you will, I guarantee you will watch it. And sure it's not. Someone calls back later. I don't know how to do this.
Every time, because it's so exciting and you're so nervous and it's information overload. And no matter what you think you'll remember, you won't. And so it just always take the video and you have it for later.
Absolutely. I'm going to do a quick little plug here because BishFix, what we're actually, the service that we're providing is people can actually call in and ask that question. Because, you know, you can type in stuff on YouTube. It is what it is, but you might not find your specific model. It might be just a little bit different. So if you guys have any questions about using whatever it is on your camper, look at bishfix.com, give us a holler. So there's one little thing, but awesome.
That's a great service.
You were just kind of, when you bought your RV, so when you went on the lot, I mean, did you call up there and then say, hey, this is what we want, and you went up and got it? Or did you talk to what we call as outfitters, salesmen? We try to outfit you with what makes the most sense for you in your situation. Salesmen will just sell sometimes whatever you guys are liking, but it turns out that wasn't what you needed, right?
Right, exactly.
How did that sales process look for you guys?
It could have probably gone a lot smoother had we shopped around and had someone help us. Here was my thing. I was like, if we're going to make this work financially to travel full time, we have to sell our house and our 2 cars and everything in it and take the proceeds and buy our truck and 5th wheel outright, 0 debt. And so to do that, I searched around there wasn't a ton of bunkhouse 5th wheels back then too. You got to understand, today there's this wonderful selection, not so much back then. And so we narrowed it down to what we were going to buy new and what we could afford in cash. And I just called dealerships around the country and said, this is what I want. This is my cash offer. Can you match it? And Duluth, Minnesota matched it because they sell ice fishing cabins in the winter, not RVs. Okay. Ice fishing trailers is what they sell in the winter. So they were like, wait a minute, you want to buy an RV now? And I was like, yeah, now. And they were like, okay, we'll do it.
Jeez and Pete.
So that's how that actually happened. It was a little bit not traditional. But back then in Kansas City, we didn't have a bunch of RV dealerships. In fact, it's now a Camping World, but it wasn't a Camping World back then. And we had a dealership, one. And there wasn't very much back then to look at. So as far as going in person, we just didn't have a lot of great resources there unless we were going to travel around a bunch. And so, it's just a different scape than today. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I remember, so I started in the RV industry about 3 years ago. And I didn't even think that there were RV dealerships out there. Yet I walked into one and I was like, I didn't even think this was a thing. And people just walk in and buy RVs. Like, okay.
It is now. It wasn't so much back then or as widespread for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a different animal. But back, now we're trying to get to the point where there's more information out there for people to do so. So if you want to learn how to prep and plan, this might not be the best one for you.
No,
she didn't want to admit it.
No, this is probably what not to do, and that's what we do. I mean, we're bloggers today. We create a lot of content around this to help people learn from our mistakes. But that's awesome because there's so many people that kind of gloss over it a little bit, and that's okay too. But there's some raw and real facts there that it's not all so easy to choose the right size to live in, to find the right RV. And so it's, there's a lot of things to consider.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure you can tell people how to prep and plan now. Right?
Yeah.
So let's unbox that a little bit. So if you were looking back, since you've been doing this for 10 years, if you were to do it again, what would you say to someone trying to get into it? Uh-oh. Oh, no.
It would be... Is it back?
Connections. Oh, wait. You coming? I think you're back.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Today, I would say the best thing to do would be to attend an RV show if there is one anywhere in your area. It's even worth traveling to one if you can. We didn't have them in our area back then so much. We kind of had a boat and sporting show that used to come to Kansas City. They had a few RVs, but we just didn't have all that. But today, it's a huge thing, even in smaller locations. So going to an RV show is amazing because it's not even just a single dealership. It's all the manufacturers, lots of dealerships, lots of buzz, and you can just freely walk in and out and see what floor plans you like, what features you like, and then of course you can talk to salespeople too once you start to get a clearer idea of exactly what you're looking for. But that way you can really, do I want a drivable RV? Do I want a towable? Do I want, a bigger size? Do I want a smaller one? You can really get a feel for all those things in person, which is a much easier, and take videos of them, right? Because same as with your walkthrough, once you start going tour after tour after tour, it jumbles in your mind and you're like, oh, wait, was that model that had the cool kitchen island? Oh, wait, I don't know now. Take a photo or video of your ones you're considering so you can remember what has what features.
Correct. And start with the model number and the name on the side.
Yes,
right when you
before
open the door,
you walk
there's usually
in.
a model number. Start there because trust
right by
me,
the door.
You will lose it.
Yeah. There's usually a little tag right by the door. Take a picture of it and then go in and take a video if you want to so you can remember. Yeah, otherwise you'll end up with the same problem. You have a bunch of tours on your phone. You're like, wait a minute, which video is that?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing is there's actually manufacturer reps there, which is like I'm trying to do. I'm trying to talk to manufacturer reps, get that information to the people because they never get to see people, but they do at shows. So if you have specific questions about a certain model, there's probably going to be a rep for that brand there.
Right. Which is
so that'll help out a lot. Those guys know those things inside and out, and it's almost like they've never talked anything besides RVs their whole life. So
right. Very good resource.
They know what they're talking about.
Yeah. Also do a ton of research. I also tell people that on where and how you want to stay in your RV. If you want to stay in national parks or state parks, going a little smaller is helpful. If you're an off-grid person and you want a boondock versus staying in RV resorts, then you want to think about solar or generator power, larger tanks, boondocking type stuff. And so both where and how you like to camp really dictates what type of RV you should purchase, especially to live in.
Absolutely. So when I learned, when I started selling, they had like there's like 13 steps, but it was like 13 questions really. And these 13 questions are going to put you into one of these buckets.
Nice.
It might work in this bucket, but you really need this bucket. You might come in here wanting this, but we're going to give you this because this makes sense.
Right.
So it's you might think you need this, but you actually probably need this.
Right. Yes.
And I've done it a lot.
You think you need the huge thing, but maybe you need to go a little more compact and just have some components that are a little more interchangeable, beds that pop up into the ceiling, or Murphy beds, or some things that allow you to go a little smaller but still have enough sleeping spaces, or maybe a convertible office space if you plan to work on the road. There's a lot of considerations there. So yeah, some of that's just research.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you really want some information, I know it's like, it sucks because you got to call the dealership, but that's what they're supposed to do. Their job is to give you information, especially RVs. It's not like buying a car. You can find everything you want about a car online.
Yeah.
RVs are different. RVs are a lot different. So you can call the people, you can go walk the lot, tell them to leave you alone if you just want to go walk the lot. But if you want the information, if you want actual information, ask someone who knows what they're talking about, which our RV dealership would, RV salesman would. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Yes.
So prep and planning. She knows now. She knows now how to do it.
Yeah.
Listen to all of her stuff. She's got a lot of good stuff. So, so your daily
most
life.
Most people learn the hard way. Yeah, I think most people learn the hard way. With everything, we still learn the hard way.
Absolutely. Failure is necessary, right? It's a necessity.
Yes, it is part of the adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so your daily life and routine got flipped upside down when you did that because you planted the seed, and then all of a sudden your house sold. And then you're like, crap, I get an RV. So you got the RV. So daily life and routine, what's that actually look like for you? Is it a typical day? Is it obviously it's a little different because you're not in the same living situation, right? But how do you manage everyday tasks? And how did you get into a remote job? All those things. Just kind of walk us through that.
it's a lot different in reality than kind of how you plan. I always tell everyone like what people think living in an RV is like versus what it really is like. So what you think when you think about living in an RV is every day we're hiking in national parks. Every night we're having this peaceful campfire and this cocktail, and we're sitting out in our camp chairs. And that's what a vacation looks like in an RV, okay? And some days as a RV living is like that, but the majority of your days are, planning your travels, actually getting there. You have daily living tasks that you have to kind of squeeze in there too, because you still have to go to the grocery store, do laundry, pay your bills, all of the things, right? So it's kind of a balancing act of adventuring and going and doing the things, and then also just resting and enjoying everyday life. And especially when you have kids, because they can't, you find out quickly, and this is the number one mistake that full-time RVers make. Find out quickly in the first year that you're going way too fast, and you start to feel a little bit burnt out.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, oh, there's another national park, there's another mountain. And you're like, man, this is sad that I feel that way, because these are epic places and epic experiences. But after you go so fast and get so tired, the wheels start to fall off and it all starts to kind of run together. So most people after year 1 or 2 start to kind of slow down. They start to kind of find their pace with school, work, travel, and start to kind of find their balance. So where in the first year we could go to a new location every 3 or 4 days, now it's like 2 or 3 weeks and maybe even a month in one spot, and then go to the next location. And that gives us enough time to sightsee in an area and then get work and school done, and also just like rest.
Oh,
yeah. And not lose your mind, right? So that is a tricky thing, especially when you're working on the road and you're homeschooling on the road. So we work online, and so we have to have time as freelancers to work in all of our projects as well. And my daughter's in high school now, so she's homeschooled, but she has to have time to fit in all her stuff around the travel. So we're at a slower pace now in year 10 than we were in year 1 by a long shot.
Year 10, that is still mind-boggling. That's a third of a life for me.
That's crazy. Yes, that's crazy, right? But
good on you, though. I don't know if I can do 10 years. I can maybe do a year. I could probably do a year.
Well, here's what happens, though. Here's what happens, though, JP. So year 1 and 2 is like getting still used to the flow of it, right? Yep. But then somewhere after that, I would say probably around year 4 or so, it starts to feel like this is your normal life. And every time like we go to a house for a while, like to stay with family and visit, you start like going crazy after a while being in the house. You're like, I gotta go.
Yeah, I gotta leave. Y'all are driving me nuts.
Right. You're driving me crazy. Bring me back to my little home on wheels, because it's what you're so used to. So somehow this became normal, and the rest is crazy town.
So maybe you should be called the Life Detourer.
Maybe. That's how we became the Adventure Detour. You're exactly spot on. So we came up with that name because we took a detour from our life to adventure, right? We gave up suburbia and went this way.
That's all right. I left the Midwest too. From like I said, I'm from Nebraska, Kansas City. It's all the same. It's all basically that full stretch.
Right there.
There's only so many things you can do, and I had to leave. That's basically why I left. Love it. Love the people there. Ain't many better than the Midwest, but had to go.
There's more out there. There's more out there. I'll tell you funny about that. So being from the Midwest, I thought we had a national park growing up, and I thought it was Yellowstone. I thought our country had a national park, one, and it was Yellowstone. We don't have that in the Midwest. Well, now we have the Arch, technically, as a national park, but that's kind of silly to me since we always grew up with it. The St. Louis Arch now is a national park, but that's kind of comical to me that they made that national park status, because that's not what you think of when you think of national park.
14 acres of it.
Yeah, right. It's right next to downtown and the river, and like this is a little green space in a structure. So, no, not really a national park, but just a few years ago. And I thought, man, that's kind of funny. But so anyway, we grew up in the Midwest without these places and experiences, and I didn't want that for our daughter. So that was a huge driving force on leaving and seeing things in real life versus reading them about them in a book.
That makes sense to me because, be honest with you, like, I mean, just from the schooling standpoint where I went to school, I mean, none of it really made sense to me. And then I started traveling. I was like, you just see the bigger picture. Like, oh my gosh, this is no joke. Like this national park is massive.
Yes.
But like, you start, this is my hometown. This is how big my world is. Then you find out that you can drive. Oh, I don't know. It gave me hearts. I don't know why. I didn't know I could do that.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do that time. Whatever.
No, it didn't. You got one and done.
I didn't know that was a thing. Well, here we are.
That was really cool. I was like, wow.
I got magic fingers today, apparently. But anyway, so like then you get to the county. Like your county's this big. Well, because I can drive now, I go to all the squares of the county. And then after that, like, well, on this part of the state, because I, for sports and athletics and all that, then I go to college and like, oh my gosh, the whole state and the next state's over is my world. And then it just keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Yes.
But with you guys, I mean, you get the world is your oyster. The U.S. is your oyster, really.
Right.
So,
but you don't know that unless you cast off and you take that risk. I remember walking in, REI was new in Kansas City when we were getting ready to launch on this adventure. And I remember walking into the sporting goods store in REI and I'm like, I think I need a pair of hiking shoes, but I don't know anything about hiking shoes. So can you help me? And this salesman busts out the hiking shoes and the wool socks. And I'm like, wool socks? And there's a whole new world opened up to me, right? So I remember leaving REI knowing we're going to move into this RV with each of us a new pair of hiking shoes. And I'm thinking, I don't even know why I need hiking shoes, but we do. And I remember the first time we brought those hiking shoes out of the box and put them on was in Acadia National Park in Maine. And we hiked our very first mountain as a family. And I'm like, oh my gosh, my mind was blown. I'm like, this is exactly why we're doing this. This is incredible. And it felt so good. And I just remember that breaking in the hiking shoes for the first time.
Yeah, but it was like, I was meant to get in an RV and see the rest of this because you can't see it all in Kansas City.
No, there's no hike. Well, there could be hiking in Kansas City, but not that type of hiking. Let's just say that.
Yeah, Maine is like a big one for me. I want to see it in like the fall. Like right now is where I'd love to be up there, see all the leaves changing. That'd be sweet.
So pretty. It's so pretty. So yeah, but experiences that we wouldn't have had if we didn't just go for it, right?
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you did. So
yes, thank you.
So I'm sure in the 10 years that you've been doing this, especially the first couple, you've had some challenges, right?
Oh yeah.
You had a whole bunch of them. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced while becoming a full-time RVer, while RVing, and how did you overcome them? And then also, like, what about maintenance and repairs? So that's a totally different aspect, kind of two different things going on here. But let's start with the first one. Biggest challenges you faced while RVing and how you've overcome those.
So maintenance and repairs are a huge part of RVing. So the biggest challenges that we face still full-time RVing is budget, because what you budget on paper is not even close to what it is in reality. And a lot of that is because your plans are constantly changing when you're on the road. For example, you can have something break. Obviously, you have repair issues, which are frequent. You can have to change your complete route. You might have like this great boondocking site you're going to stay for free, or this really cheap place that you're going to stay in your campsite, and there's a wildfire or there's a flood. You can't go there after all. And that happens a lot, and you have to completely reroute, change your plans, and now you're staying at this expensive place that you didn't plan because it's the only spot in town available. So overall changes in plans is a huge hurdle, because as a vacationer, you have a couple reservations for your vacation, you're done. As a full-time RVer, you have back-to-back reservations like dominoes for sometimes a whole year in advance, because it's tricky to get reservations. And when one falls, they just all topple. It's insane. It bumps them all back. You have to cancel, and then you have no place to stay. So there's actually a free resource on our website, which is a free guide. It's on our website, theadventuredetourabout.com. And on that website is a free guide that you can get that has all our hacks for how to get really difficult campsites that are always booked, that are sold out campsites in state parks, national parks, because campsite availability is probably the biggest thorn in any RVer side, whether you're full-time or not. It's really hard to get a spot. So that guide will help you. But yeah, if someone gets sick and your plans have to change, then you have to cancel the next reservation and they all start to fall apart. It can be really stressful to get into their spot. So, and repairs. So we've utilized mobile repair a lot on the road. We have an extended warranty with both of our RVs that we bought. We had extended warranties. We got them that included mobile repair, which I highly recommend. There's not a lot of extended warranties that cover mobile repair, but some of them do. And if you can get that, then that's a huge help because they can come and help you right at your campsite. Just like the Bitch Fix, where you can call and get some help right at your campsite. If you can't fix it yourself, even with that, then you can have mobile RV repair come and help you, which we've done a lot. So yeah, that's a huge hack, because when you live in your RV, if you need to take it in for service, you're essentially homeless, during that time.
At least for a night or two, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. You just never know. Like, our longest has been 3 weeks that we've lived in a hotel, and that's really rough. So, budget, that's where I talk about the budget again. So budget more than you think you need per month, because you will need it, because stuff happens that you don't plan for, and you'll be glad you had that extra buffer kind of built in there. So,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Embrace it all, right? Because even the challenges are part of your adventure. And at the time you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me, like, again, but it's a funny campfire story later.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that. We'll have you back in eventually.
Yeah, right.
So you're really kind of hitting on the budgeting thing, and financially, this is different. I mean, it's a totally different model than the original or the normal lifestyle of having a mortgage or rent payment, right? So financially, like, how do you sustain this lifestyle financially? Obviously, you guys work on the road, but any specific tips you can offer someone that's earning a regular income, like on the road, like, how do you budget this properly? You said you had that guide, so that's a wonderful thing, but like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So always have an extra budget per month for repairs, because repairs are just inevitable. Your house is like an earthquake on wheels. Stuff breaks when you go down the road. So have a budget for repairs. Food costs and gas costs are very variable depending wherever you are in the country. Out west, particularly for gas, it can be extremely expensive. So you kind of have to, I always move slower, because that's another reason to not travel so fast. You not only don't get burnt out and you have time for your daily living, but it's less expensive to move a little bit slower. You save money on gas. Sometimes your campsites are cheaper when you stay longer, but there's a whole lot of ways to save money. And we have a blog post on this actually, but part of it is getting cheaper campsites or boondocking. We're not boondockers. JB, we are not boondockers. I love to have electricity and water and sewer.
I get it.
It's just not our thing. But God bless the boondockers, because they're awesome. They save money. They get these amazing sites with these beautiful views. It's not us, but you can save money at campgrounds too by getting memberships is a great way to save money, or staying longer, because they give you a really cheap monthly rate. Sometimes the monthly rate can be as cheap as a week or maybe 2 weeks outright at a campground, and you can save for the whole month. So look into that for sure. State parks are cheaper. National parks are cheaper camping if you can get a spot, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of ways that you can save money on the road and budget, but always just have a buffer, have a good savings account and a buffer each month, and you'll need it for sure. Yeah.
Because life happens.
Life happens often.
Life happens. Question for you. I've heard, so I've talked to several of y'all, y'all RV influencers now.
Yeah.
1,000 Trails keeps coming up. You utilize 1,000 Trails?
We do utilize it. We bought 1,000 Trails membership, right at the get-go, before we even left our house, 2014. And we bought it used, which a lot of people don't realize you can do.
It's like a timeshare, right?
It's like a timeshare. And we got the whole thing really cheap on a used membership. And my tip there is there's a broker that flips memberships. And so if you don't want to buy from an individual because that's selling it, because you're like, you don't want to worry about getting scammed or whatever, you can go through the broker. And I believe it's called Campground Membership Outlet. They've been around forever, and they're down in Florida, and they do the research for you and take care of the transfer from the old owner to you. And so there's a little transfer fee regardless through Thousand Trails, but it's the way to go to get it cheap. But you either love Thousand Trails or you hate Thousand Trails, by the way. Thousand Trails is a love or hate.
I've heard the same about timeshares.
Yeah, but maybe even more so with Thousand Trails. Thousand Trails is a great fit for someone that just wants overnight parking and nothing more, because the quality of the resorts vary widely.
Really?
Some are as rustic as they look like they haven't been touched since 1960. And then others are really nice and have nice amenities and pools and things. So there's some caveats with Thousand Trails, and getting reservations are sometimes really a challenge. So a lot of people invest a huge amount of money in that and can't get a spot when they want it, and then they're extremely angry. So there's a lot to Thousand Trails, but we've used it for a lot of years. It's saved us a lot of money as full-time RVers. So it's worth it in that aspect, but it's also kind of a big thorn in our side. So that's just keeping it real and honest.
Well, I appreciate the ER.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you brought up community. I mean, not so much community, but connection. So like when I say that, is like you talked about before we kind of got on here, we were talking about your teenage daughter. Yeah. Right. Totally different lifestyle for a teenager, you know, going through this, but like community connection, like how do you stay connected with like your friends and family while traveling? And then have you found a sense of community within the RVing world? Let's just kind of go through all that.
Sure. Yeah. So when I mentioned I had a notebook and I was learning how to RV and full-time RV off of Facebook groups, one of those was a group called Full-Time Families, which still exists today. They have a membership portion to their group as well, but it's basically families that travel full-time on the road. And it's a really great organization because they have get-togethers, they have rallies, and you can easily see where people are at. People will say, hey, I'm here right now, and or is anyone else in this area? And you can meet up with other families. That was our first resource with getting plugged into other families. And then I mentioned that we do utilize Thousand Trails, and pretty much every family utilizes Thousand Trails. Thousand Trails are basically a family reunion for full-time traveling families. So if you love kids, Thousand Trails are amazing. If you don't, not a great fit. There's a lot of kids in Thousand Trails campgrounds. So literally, if you just step outside or attend a campground event while you're at one, your kid's or go to the pool, your kid's guaranteed to connect with a whole lot of other kiddos. And so it's pretty easy to find the connection as long as you are willing to, you have to step out there and attend something, you know, but if you're willing to do that, it's pretty easy to find other full-time RVers, other families. Now, when we left, my daughter was super little. She was starting kindergarten, and now I mentioned she's in high school. So it's been a little bit different because when they're young, they want to go do all they want the rallies, they want the get-togethers, they want to go meet all the kids, hang out at the playground, all the stuff. When they're a little bit older, they're a little bit less, you know, they can be a little bit less to going meeting other kids and different things. But yeah, our travels have definitely transformed over the years as far as with kids.
Yeah, I totally believe it. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, I'm kind of a social butterfly, so it would have been interesting for me anyway. But, you know, I mean, it sounds like everyone else is in the same boat. So if they don't know any different, you don't know any different. What's the difference?
Yes. Yeah.
So
it's in some ways it's a lot easier to have a community than living in a house because everyone at a campground has the similar interests, you know, and if you meet up with other full-time RVers, they're all living the same life that you are. So there's no other time in life that I could think of where you have so many things in common, you know, with everyone else that's around you. So it makes it pretty easy to connect with people if you're, you know, up for the challenge, up for talking to people. So it's been a lot of fun. We've met a lot of great people on the road.
I can imagine. So, I mean, doing it for 10 years, I'm sure you got a lot of friends that you still talk to from like early stages.
Beginning. Yeah. The very beginning. Awesome. Yeah. It was so funny at the very get-go. There weren't any young people. So for the first few years, really. And so we connected with a lot of retirees. And it was a really interesting dynamic because they were retirees that were missing their grandkids and their family back home, and they're on the road. And here I've got this young girl that's missing her grandparents and her older figures in her family. And we had what we called road grandparents. And we like picked up on all these retired couples that we would hang out with, and they would love on our daughter and she would love on them. And they'd bake cookies together. Like, we used to have a big time like that.
Yeah, that's awesome though.
Yeah. And then, obviously more and more families got into this, and it wasn't like we were kind of a circus sideshow at the beginning. We'd roll in and people were like, "You live in this? How do you live in this?" And it was like it was a million questions, And it's not that way anymore because it's a lot more acceptable. But yeah, back then it was really funny. No, we have no trust fund. No, we're not retired. We used to get all the questions.
Yes. This is like, okay, so this, I'm going to come up just a little sidetrack here. You would consider yourself normal, everyday people.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, because people, why I ask that is like, you all are normal people doing so. And people are like, "Oh, I can't do that. I ain't got the money for it." But like, well, you're not living the same lifestyle as you would be if you're living in a house.
Right.
You can do it. Normal people do it all the time. You're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to several other people that are doing it. It is totally doable.
Yeah.
So I love to hear
totally
that.
Doable. Yeah. I mean, especially today, it's more doable than ever in history because there's more remote jobs than ever. School can be completely remote in easier ways than homeschool than ever before. So actually, post-pandemic, this is the easiest time ever to do this. Oh no, are you trying to make cards again?
Yeah. Woo! Got another one. I love this conversation.
That's so cool. But yeah, so there's never been a better time to find an online job if you're like, "Oh, well, I would do it if I had the income to take with me." You can. You just have to search for it. We have a great website that I used to look on all the time called Rat Race Rebellion, and they post online jobs that are easily mobile. So I used to look on there all the time, and I would love the job postings that they have. And of course, there's customer service jobs, there's different things online, but you can find work camping as well for in-person type jobs. But it's easier now to work remotely and internet's better than it's ever been.
Oh yeah, it's only getting better.
Yeah, it's getting better all the time. It's still challenged in some locations, but it's getting there. And so, yeah, remote work is possible. So there's really no limiting factor anymore. That was the huge limiter before. And I'd say it's
a totally different world.
Yeah.
Well, since you've been doing this for 10 years, I'm sure you have a ton of favorite experiences. So can you share some of your most memorable experiences on your favorite destinations? What are some unexpected benefits of RV lifestyle that you didn't think of before?
Yeah, that's a good question because there's so many good spots.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
That's really hard. Benefit wise is the family time and the family closeness. I always tell people this because when you live in a house and you've got all these commitments, especially with kids, right? Like you're shuffling kids to practices and this event and this get together and so-and-so's birthday party. And there's a million things in your community that are pulling your family in different directions every single day, from school and jobs to sports and commitments. And something magical happens when you leave that behind and just you and your family unit take off in this small living space. You have to adapt a little bit.
Oh, I bet.
But once you get past that adapting to being kind of confined, it's just you guys. It's easy to block out everything else because now you have all this time together. So when you go out adventuring and you're hiking or you're trying something new together, you have all these amazing experiences and memories that you're building that you would have never had time for, being distracted in all these different ways when you live in the house. So that's probably one of the hugest benefits. I always say, like, when we're on our deathbed, right, someday, you're never going to lay there and say, I wish I had a bigger house, more clothes, nicer cars. It's never going to be that, right? It's going to be, I wish I had more time with my family. I wish I had more experiences, more travel, more adventures. So for us, it was like, yeah, oh, I didn't do it this time. I can't get it to do it. It doesn't like me. Oh,
Hold it. See if you can do it. Hold it real close and stay in one spot.
It doesn't like
No,
me.
maybe
No.
not. Maybe it's just mine because
I'm a loser. Oh well, but you're never gonna think that. So like for our family, it was really obvious. Is like a lot of like my husband's parents didn't make it to retirement. You know, we wait for a someday, but I hate to say it, someday sometimes doesn't happen. Or you make it to retirement and you're not in the greatest of health. You can't do it anymore, right? So it's risky to go now and to do it now, but now is the time when you got your kids with you, you got your health, you have your ability to do it. So those are just some little like takeaways and nuggets that, as far as experience wise. Locations, man, that's a tough one because there's so many good. Maine has our heart. We've spent we've spent 2 summers, 2 whole summers in Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont, and that area like calls to me. If it wasn't so far away, it's so far. Gosh, so it's so in the summertime I'm going to go there. Wintertime, it's hard to beat Florida and the Keys and the beach, and I love all that so much. So we're in Florida a lot because I love the beaches and the theme parks, and I love to paddle in the springs. There's all these natural springs in Florida.
I've heard that.
Oh,
I've heard great things about the springs. Yeah,
they look like
cooler water too. I've heard
completely cold and clear. You can see all the way to the bottom, all the fish and sometimes gators that you're paddling with. But it's incredible. It's like being in an aquarium on a river. And so we do all that. So Florida kind of has my heart for the winter and this year, the summer too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I love that. On the West Coast, I'm a huge fan of Oregon. Oregon is my favorite on the West. Central Oregon, like Bend, love the high desert so much. And then I also love the coast of Oregon and all the rock formations that it has. And Oregon's hard to beat. The West Coast.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, the water, unfortunately, in the Pacific is very chilly.
Very, yes.
I was there in October a couple of years ago.
Ooh,
it was a little too nippy. I did go to the coast. It was like Lincoln City or something like that. But it was just, I mean, driving through, I only got into like the forest a little bit, but that mossy, eerie, I don't know, you feel almost grounded driving through there, you know?
It has a smell. I can smell it right now as you talk about it.
Yeah, it's almost too fresh, you know?
Earthy and mossy. And it smells like fairies should pop out and start singing.
They just got flying out, get one on the windshield.
I know. Look out, fairy. Yeah, we used to joke about the fairies when we were out there because it just looks like it's oozing with moss. I love it. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. But you gave some advice there. Yeah. Now's the time. Right. If you really want to do it, make it happen, go do it. Because it's like, don't think about it, just go. Yeah. Right. So that'd be an advice for beginner. Right. But what other advice would you give to someone that's just on the fence about transitioning into full-time RVing?
You could have a 1 or 2 year plan and keep some of your stuff in case you don't like it. That's kind of what we kept some things when we left. And then I laughed and we got rid of most of it. I don't know why we kept it to begin with. But if you want to dip your toe, now we couldn't afford to keep our house. Some people will keep their house, some people will rent it even and try to get an income off of their house while they're traveling. So there's some dip your toe options there if you want to rent your house or try to keep it and maybe give it a year. If you can't afford to keep the house and you still want to go for it, you could potentially store your belongings in case you find your dream location on the road and then transport your stuff there. Everybody I talk to is always like, we're going to RV full time for a year or 2, and then we're going to find our dream location. And it's funny because I don't know that many people ever end up finding that dream spot. A lot of them get they get hooked on the traveling part and they keep going, or it's there's no perfect location that's like the spot in winter and summer and all the seasons. Like there's always that thing. So we've never found the spot that I would want to park it and be. So, but there's a few ways to kind of dip your toe in there that aren't so scary and permanent. Another way that you can kind of dip your toe, which I like to tell people, is to rent an RV. So if you've never RV'd before, or you're not sure about this, about living in a confined space with your family, you could always rent an RV, say even for a few weeks or a month or however long you can, and park it at a campground near your house and play full-time RVer. Right? Just work from the RV, school from the RV, be in that small space together and see like how does that feel to you? And that could give you a little bit of knowing too.
Definitely. I mean, it's a totally different lifestyle than you would. I have the vagabond soul too. I really do. I would love to just dip off. But I'm more of like the van style. Like I want to be able to like still have a home base. Because I live on Boise now and I absolutely love it. I
bet.
Yeah, I'm not too far from Bend, about 5 hours, so it's a good spot for me.
Yeah.
But I would do the same thing. I just throw it all in a storage unit and see you later. That's what I would do. I have a lot of toys, unfortunately, and a lot of stuff for like hunting, fishing, dirt biking, all that. I have a lot of expensive hobbies. Skiing.
Yeah.
I mean, everything I do is expensive, which is bad. So like getting a super expensive van is not going to work for me.
No, but that's funny.
Yeah, if I were going to do it, I'd love to do it. But one other thing on the advice for beginners, what's like a common misconception about RVing full time? Think you know anything like that?
Yeah, so that it's cheap.
Oh, okay.
I mean, everyone says that, right? Like, okay, live in an RV, it's going to be so much cheaper than other ways of living. Okay, to be completely transparent, it can be. If you don't have a bunch of loans, you bought a used RV, not so expensive, you are debt free, you boondock all the time, you don't travel super fast, it can be super cheap, okay? Or it could be more than you spent living in your house. If you're like, I want to go to this area and I want to see and do all the things while I'm there, then you're spending more like a tourist spends, on vacation. So it's not always cheaper than living in a house. For us, coming from the Midwest, which is a cheaper housing market, living in an RV for us is about the same cost as in the house. So we've swapped the house payment for gas and campgrounds for the most part. And if you have a loan on your RV, then that gets tied into there. So for us, it's kind of a wash. The way I look at it is now we have all these amazing experiences instead of just house maintenance and sitting in one spot in the suburbs, right? So for us, now from someone that's coming from a higher housing market, like California or out west or somewhere, then of course it's going to be cheaper, right, to live in an RV than that housing situation. So it depends, but there's always going to be repairs and maintenance that are going to sting a little bit. Your gas costs can be extremely high if you travel really far, really fast. And if you want to do and see all the things like a tourist, if that's what you're kind of in for, or you're a foodie and you want to try all the local foods, and it can get expensive.
Yeah. I actually just saw, I don't know if you ever heard of Gales on Wheels.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. They just went up to Alaska about a month ago or what?
How cool.
I mean, what they're posting a month ago. I don't know if that's where they were a month ago. I'm actually supposed to talk to them. I was supposed to talk to them yesterday. Had to reschedule because we had work stuff. It happens.
Yeah.
we got other plans that happened that day. But anyway, so I'll talk to them next Friday. But they had a nice post. They took their truck camper up into Alaska, and they're like, what we spent on our Alaskan trip in like 3 weeks. And it was like cha-ching, 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 cha-ching. It was like it was a very expensive trip.
Of course it is. Yeah.
They're real and raw about it. Like, it's no joke if you want to do it. I mean, I'm sure you can do it like boondocking route. If you got the truck paid off, you got the camper paid off, and you just park and you can live off the grid. Like, you can. Obviously that's going to be cheap, right?
Totally.
If you do that for a week at a time. But if you're going every 2 nights, news place, every 2 nights, another place. I mean, gas, rent, whatever it may be. Rent for the campground. It's going to get expensive.
It gets
quite
expensive,
quickly.
Yeah. And we're kind of in the middle. So we use the campground membership, so we don't spend a ton on campgrounds, but we do like to go see and do all the activities. So, because to me, that's what I'm in it for. So you can balance that with nature activities. Hiking's free.
It's true.
Put on those hiking shoes, right? But then, we rent equipment, we paddle and do different things. So it really just depends kind of what your lifestyle is and your interests are. If you're a golfer or you're into wanting to go to ball games in every, park around the country or something like that, you're going to spend a lot more money on ticketed type of activities than you would if you were just wanting to go to state parks and hike and bike and stuff. So yeah, it just depends really. But yeah, don't always assume that it's going to be super cheap.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's not the cheapest lifestyle. Yeah. And like going to Alaska, a million things break going to Alaska because the road is like unreal. The potholes and it tears everything
Frost
up.
heaves and all that.
Oh my gosh. So whatever your repair budget is normally, I don't even know what you got to do to go to Alaska. Yeah.
3 times it.
At least 3x it. Yeah. It's going to be an insane repair bill. So know that going in.
Awesome. Well, you've been a lot of places, right? But what are the future plans for you? What do you got plans, goals on your RV journey? How do you see your lifestyle evolving from here?
Mm-hmm. We have been toned down the last couple years on more of a business focus. So I always say there's like travel focus, life focus. We travel focused for so many years, and then now we're a little bit more business focused. So we're working on our stuff and slowly kind of moving along. But I would like to go back out west again next year and hit all the national parks that we didn't hit the first time we went throughout west. We've been up and down the East Coast like a whole lot, but we've only been up the West Coast and around once. And I want to go back and hit some additional parks that we didn't get to hit the first time. So, and we're actually thinking about switching RVs. I alluded to the point that we went big twice, and now our goal was to stay in national parks, which means we need to think about, I think, RV number 3. And so, yeah, we're working on that. I don't know what we want yet, but hopefully we're going to have something a little more manageable and go to those parks out west.
Awesome. Well, give us a holler before you do. We'll see if we can help you out.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. So that's another interesting whole thought, but that's what I'm thinking. I wouldn't even mind keeping our large fifth wheel and having something smaller. So be a two-rig family, which the couple you were just talking about that went to Alaska, that's what they do. They have a large fifth wheel like us, and they have the truck camper for smaller. And I actually love that idea. So I'm thinking a small drivable and then the large fifth wheel.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you might make more money.
That's a little crazy. That's a little crazy, right? But that gives you ultimate freedom because you have a house, home base with all your stuff in it, right? And then you can winter in that and have it when you're moving slow. But when you're really like hauling tail and making tracks, you can have the little guy. So I'm kind of thinking that might be in our future for sure.
Well, all right. Well, you can give us a call when you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. So big things are on the pipe for next year.
Big things are coming. It's going to take a while to build it, but if we build it, they will come. So
that's right. That's how we do it. We don't think about it or plan it. We just do it.
Go. Yeah, you could have zero plans and just give me a holler one day. Hey, we want to buy it tomorrow.
We're ready to go.
Well, I don't know if I have one.
Exactly.
You gotta give me a minute.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll have to take our own advice and go to RV show and look and see what options are and shop and do all the things. Yeah.
It'll take time.
Yeah.
All righty, Vanessa. Well, it's been a wonderful time talking to you so far. So I got one more question for you.
Sure.
The last question is favorite gadgets, gizmos, add-ons that you've done this for 10 years. So you've had to find some things that you're like, this is a must have. But what are your favorite must-haves or gadgets, gizmos, add-ons that you had on your RV? And kind of what about do they cost, if you don't mind me asking? Give me 3 of them.
Good question. It's a very good question. Disc brakes. We just put on disc brakes, and I think that is a must-have. We went without them all these years, right? But we've also have a lot of close calls. You will not, the minute you try to drive a large towable, you will notice that everyone thinks you're a target to cut you off and slam on the brakes. It's like, oh my gosh, people, could you just drive?
Yeah.
But the problem with that is you don't stop on a dime and it's scary. Like, we have a lot of close calls. So along that thread, I think every RVer needs a dash cam. You have to have a dash camera. You will get cut off and so close to hitting people a lot of times. And that's a scary part of towing something large or maybe even large drivables, but especially large towables, have a dash cam so that it's recording, and if something happens, you can prove what happened. So we have a dash cam. We upgraded recently to disc brakes, which I highly recommend. That is pricey, and I don't actually have the figure on that right now, so I apologize. Because we work with brands, so some of our stuff is partnerships, and that was a partnership, but that was a really good one because now we can stop so much faster, and I feel a lot more chill when the brakes start to slam on people driving maniacs in Florida. So those two things as far as safety for towing. Backup cameras, really helpful. If you're, a lot of the RVs have them now. They didn't all used to have them, but they have them now. That's super helpful. So you're not only relying on your spotter, because your spotter might be not knowing what to spot.
Or too many directions. Like,
we have a funny video about that where the spotter goes postal and it's like,
yeah, oh yeah, I get it.
I go postal sometimes on my husband when we're backing in the RV. So yeah, right. The old term, like, don't, never mind what we said when we're backing the RV in, right?
Yeah.
Backup camera is helpful. Man, I don't know. Not a whole lot of stuff is coming. We are like really basic. We're not gadgety for the most part.
You've been living in an RV for 10 years.
I know, right? But we're not like all latest and greatest. Oh, Helper Springs products. So we went years without upgrading our truck suspension, our rear suspension. We were squatted down and bottomed out in the rear, and we didn't know it. And we were kind of porpoising. The front of our truck was a little bit porpoising, which can cause you to sway and lose control. So we didn't know about that, but we learned about Timbren. Timbren makes a bump stop type of product that replaces the bump stop that's in your rear. And it's a real easy self-installation. Just swap it out, and it keeps your ride level and makes sure that you have more control. And it's so much smoother. Those first few years without it, I remember like trying to take a drink, spilling my water down.
Yeah.
It was so rough. And so that's a really great upgrade that we made a couple years in, and we've had it this whole time. They last forever. Like, so you never have to replace it. Some people go the airbag route, but the problem with that is you have to test the inflation and air them up all the time. We went with the Timberens because you just pop them in and they set it and forget it. You don't ever have to maintenance them or do anything with them. So disc brakes, backup camera, dash camera, and Timberens if you're towing. I love that.
That's awesome. I've never actually heard of that. I know the bumps, like I know what a bump stop is, so I know what I know the leaf springs and all that. So that's interesting. It's a
rubber. It's a rubber product that lasts forever.
Very interesting. So that's cool. I had to look into that. And I guess I lied. I did lie. I have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
You've been doing this for 10 years and you didn't stop. It was a 2-year plan at first.
Yeah.
What's your why to keep doing so?
It's addictive.
That's why I'm addicted to it. I got a problem.
I'm addicted. I have to have it. No, it's true. Like, you think, okay, it's so funny because before you do this, you're like, I'm going to travel for a year. Oh, I can do everything in a year. A year is so much time. I could see all the states and all the parks. And you think this in your mind. And in reality, a year gives you a tiny taste. Like, if you're cooking with gas and you're driving really fast and really far, you start to just get a gloss over of everything. But you miss like most of it because you don't have that much time. And then the second you're like, okay, year 2, I'm going to go back and see some of the things I didn't get to see. And you just realize how much more there always is. And you're learning about the next place to add to your list. And your travel list keeps growing. And it's addictive because you're like, oh man, now I got to go see that. Now I got to go see that. And it never ends.
Yeah. Jeez. So that's kind of your why. Just, it's addictive. It's like, I want to see this. What's really crazy to me, it's kind of on that point, is I kind of got addicted to traveling too. I mean, I've been to 14, 15 countries now and I love it. But then in the US alone, the lower 48, I've been to Alaska. I've not been to Hawaii. That's a plan though. I've been to most of the 48 states, probably been over half of them. That's especially in the West, not so much in the East. Yeah. But if you haven't driven across this country, a lot of people just stay in one spot and never leave. I mean, I know people that have never left my hometown, like barely left.
Yeah.
And once you start doing that and seeing how much different everything is across the U.S., you're like, oh my gosh, your mind just gets blown because there's different biomes or different geographical monuments. I mean, there's just things that just don't even look similar 3 hours from where you just started.
Right.
And then another 3 hours past that, there's cedar trees everywhere. And then another 3 hours past that, it's nothing but sagebrush, and it's just tumbleweeds, you know?
Mind blowing. Yeah.
Yeah. So like get out there and go see it. Why not? You only live one time. You know, YOLO is a real deal. The older I get,
it is a real deal. YOLO. Yes, YOLO. I remember getting out west, and I didn't even know that we had lava tube caves in our country. I thought that was Hawaii, obviously not in the lower 48. I thought it was a Hawaii thing to have a lava tube cave. And then I come out in Oregon, I'm like, there's all these lava tube caves in Northern California has them too. I'm like, wow. In Washington, like all that whole zone is all volcanic. And I'm like, I didn't even know that existed in our country. And I feel like my education failed me.
We'll talk about that another day.
Right? That's a whole other topic. But it's like, I didn't learn about all these things or states that were mountainous that I didn't know were. I didn't know that Nebraska had partly mountains and part of Nebraska, like on the Colorado. And I didn't know, there were so many things I didn't know until I was on the road. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everyone I know that's like, oh, you come from Nebraska, it's flat as all get out. No, it's really not. I thought so.
Yeah, I thought so.
You just seen I-80, which, it sucks. It's awful.
Yeah. It's like Kansas. Nebraska's like Kansas. Yeah, that part. But there's so many things. And you'll realize every state has some treasure like that you wouldn't have realized until you start looking up what is there to see here. And your mind's blown. You're like, wow, there's a lot of stuff to see here. So it's very addictive.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you're doing it. I'm glad you're loving it so much. I mean, the Adventure Detour, you guys are on Instagram for sure. TikTok as well?
Yep. Facebook, YouTube, and our website, theadventuredetour.com.
And that's where our free guide is.
Yeah, that's where our free guide is. Everything on there is free, but the guide is super helpful for getting those sold out sites. So yeah, check it out.
Perfect. Yeah. So check out Vanessa and Scott, right?
Yeah.
I never asked, what's your pet?
Oliver. He is a French bulldog that is so spoiled. He's a long-haired French bulldog, which is really rare, and he's my baby. He knows it too. Near you? Is he near you? No, because he's wild. He is in the bedroom with my daughter because every time I get on the phone or I start having a call with someone, he gets crazy and rams my legs and wants to play, and he's kind of nuts.
Well, I mean, French bulldogs are usually pretty hyper.
He's super hyper. Like, I don't know. He fits in with our crew, though, because we're kind of a wild crew. So it's all good.
10 years on the road, you got to have a screw loose or two. So that's okay.
Totally. Maybe more so all the time.
Yeah. Well, again, Vanessa, thank you so much to you and your family, and especially you for joining us today. The Adventure Detour, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, they're adventuredetour.com if you want to see how to do this better and get like cheaper night stays, right? You have a whole e-guide or whatever it may be.
Yeah, saving money. Mm-hmm.
Check them out, give them a follow, and please, if you like what you're hearing, give us a follow. If you want to hear about something, I would love to get like 1,000 Trails on here. I want to get Blackstone on here. I want to get all these people on here. Yeti coolers. I want to get them on here to talk about camping stuff. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Vanessa, thank you so much for your time, and
thank you.
Stay tuned for more from the RV Voice.